Hello, good morning, everyone. All my mind can think of is don't fall down the stairs, don't fall down the stairs. How's everybody doing today? Isn't it exciting to be out again, shaking hands with people? I don't know if you recall, months ago, we weren't sure whether we could shake hands or fist bump or do the elbows, so you had this awkward seconds. But now here you are, you can shake hands, and hopefully we can get back to giving hugs to one another really soon. So a round of applause to how far we've all gone so far. Fantastic. My name is Ayo Owodunni. I want to thank Nick and Laurie for your kind introduction. I do appreciate it. Today I'm going to be talking about the Canadian immigrants. You know, more immigrants are coming into Canada on a regular, consistent basis. On a yearly basis, we have thousands coming in, myself included. I came from Nigeria 6 years ago. And there is great benefits, untapped resources that are in our communities that we need to start looking at, we need to start activating, and we need to help them soar. Because as they soar, as they grow, the benefits of inclusivity, the benefits of diversity can really start to emerge and come out. But until we give them that opportunity, until we start to understand people, until we start to empathize with people, until we start to identify each and every single one of them and see them as an equal, those chances and that potential will not be there. So for the next how long I'm going to be speaking, and then also later on today, I'm going to be diving into some stories just to give us an idea of what that looks like. Before we even get started, let me just give you my background. I'm from Nigeria. I moved here in 2016 with my wife. And I will never forget the day we made a decision to move. My wife was working at PwC. She had been promoted 3 times in like 2 years at that point. I had started my own consulting firm back home in Nigeria. Young, newly married. She was about 2 months pregnant. And there was just a lot of joy and excitement. But then one day we're driving home. It's 10:30 at night. We're heading back home. And we still had about an hour of driving to go. And usually we would wake up around 4 o'clock, leave the house by 5:30. No lie, I'm not exaggerating. And you're getting to the office by 7:30 to 8:30. So you're looking at 2 to 3 hours of traffic. And you're doing the same thing coming back home. So I remember she said to me, we were in traffic. We still had 1 hour left to go. And she looked at me and she basically said, do you want to raise children in this? And I remember my answer was no. And then she said, there's this great place called Canada. I'm like, Canada? What's there? You know, that was the first thing that came to my mind. But that was the conversation that really birthed the desire to move to another country. So I think it's important that we're aware that when people move here, sometimes it's for economic reasons. Sometimes they're looking at better opportunities. And sometimes, like us, we just wanted a place where we could raise our family. When we finally decided to settle in Kitchener, one thing that we love about Kitchener is you can get anywhere in 15 minutes to 20 minutes, you know? So thank you. We got our Kitchener residents in the house. And that is part of the benefit of living in such a great place. So we went from 2.5 hours of traffic to 15 minutes. So sometimes when I hear Canadians going, oh, there's so much traffic, we were in there for 25 minutes, I'm like, okay, so I want to start introducing you to some of the amazing people that are in your country. I want to start out with Robert Newith. He has a TED Talk. You should check it out, by the way. Just type his name in TED Talk. And he was talking about, he is a journalist, and he was doing some research back in Africa around economic, the benefits of really building economics in your local neighborhoods. And one of the key things that he discovered, he went to a market called Alaba Market. It's in Lagos, Nigeria. Really booming market and industry. And it's a majority Igbo tribe, which is one of the many tribes in Nigeria. And he was having conversations with a lot of the business owners there, and he kept hearing a repeated phrase when they said, my master settled me, with the strong Nigerian accent, my master settled me. And he was trying to figure out exactly what the heck they were talking about. So eventually he gathered up the courage and he asked them, what do you mean by this? And basically what he discovered was In the tribe, when you're a business owner, what you would do is you would have people join you, and basically you teach them how to run your business. You teach them supply chain. You teach them how to discuss with clients. You teach them how to run the business, how you determine your pricing and things like that. And after that individual works with you for a few years, what you basically do is you now settle them by giving them their seed fund for them to start their own business. And the Igbo tribe has really blown up across Nigeria. They are the business tribe, as we would like to say. And I'm just generalizing at this point, but that is a concept that has been learned from them. And he said one key thing that I thought was really powerful. He basically said, look, if Silicon Valley, or if the world of business could learn, they could learn a lot from the Igbo tribe. Because they have built a system that has helped their businesses grow, and they've had a chance to really expand, not just within their region, but across Nigeria. In the 70s, Nigeria had a civil war. And at the end of the civil war, because the Igbo tribe was at the losing end, each individual, I believe, received about 20 pounds or something. So imagine everybody here, your bank account is wiped out completely because you lost the civil war and you all got $20. Think about that. 30, 40 years later, the Igbo tribe, they're leaders across several sectors. They've started their own businesses. They own their own businesses. But as of 30, 40 years ago, each individual only had 20 pounds, actually, 20 pounds in their accounts. So think about that. There was another QZ article, QZ.com, that talked about what Silicon Valley could learn from the Igbo tribe. This is an example for me, what I call the gift of the head. And I like to say there are many people like this that are living in your community with business ideas and business thoughts. Here's another example I want you to be mindful of. His name is Chao Jin. He's a good friend of mine. Chao Jin is originally from China. And we were working on a project together for a client. And basically the client was looking to implement 5G technology here in Canada, and we were supposed to come in and provide some advice and tips. We were MBA students doing our MBA projects then. And there were five people actually in the group, and we had all these meetings. And I noticed that Chao Jun rarely spoke during the meetings. So eventually I made a conscious effort, at the next meeting I'm going to shut up and I'm going to repeatedly ask him questions. So I asked him a few questions. Chao Jun, what are your thoughts? Chao Jun, what should we do? Chao Jun, you've been listening for a while. What do you think we should do? We discovered as a group that in China they've been using 5G for a very long time. At that point it was probably about 2 years or so. In fact, he was sharing about how you go to a restaurant, you don't pay with cash, they scan your face and that's your payments. And he was sharing all these advances that they were doing. So all the four of us looked at ourselves like, come on, idiots. Like, really? We're trying to work on a project and predict, but here is someone that is in the group that has lived with this technology, in this technology for 2 years, worked around the technology as well, but we never tapped that resource. What was the problem? Number one, English was not his first language. So he spoke slowly because he had to find the words and translate it into English. For us, we translated fluency and eloquence with intelligence. And I want you to remember that. However, at the end of the day, intelligence is not about how well you speak sometimes. It is what is in your mind, what is in your head, what have you seen, what have you experienced, what have you been educated in, what have you been exposed to. And many times you're not going to get that until we calm down, we relax, we numb ourselves, we ask questions, and we shut up. And for the rest of the project, Chao Jun became the leader, we all shut up, and we all just started writing notes. But think about that. Another gift of the head. And there are many Chao Juns. It might not be from the same country, it might be from different countries, but there are many that are in your communities. But because English is not their first language, they don't feel comfortable speaking up. And lastly, I want to just share this one. This is one I was just recently exposed to. I was speaking to someone from Ukraine. She just recently came here, and she's looking to bring her family over here as well. And we were just having a conversation. And her father owns his own construction company. back in Ukraine. And he used to build homes and build a lot of fantastic places. And years of experience, I believe it was 20 to 30 years, I don't remember the exact amounts of experience. He has several people that are working for him. And now she's trying to bring him here to look for a job. And as we were having a conversation, I was just like, man, think about that. Someone that has over 20-something years of experience in building homes coming into your community. Imagine the resources. Imagine the gift of the hand that is coming and the gift of the head that is coming with that. But here's a caveat. He doesn't speak English. So he's learning how to speak English. Is there a way that our communities can tap into resources and people that don't speak English well, but have so much to offer? And because they're forcing themselves to speak English due to circumstances that they've been through in life, could we take ourselves and move a next step forward and try to figure out how we can start either speaking their language or asking questions and keeping quiet and being patient as they provide answers for us and to us? So many times we say we're looking for the resources. I want to say that we have the resources right around us. We have to open our eyes a little better and look at the resources around us and really tap into it, ask great questions, and work with them. And this is the last one. Tales by Moonlight. I call it the Nigerian version of Mr. Rogers. This is something that we grew up with in Nigeria. Every single week, we were blessed with amazing stories about the turtle or the tortoise. I thought it was the same thing until I grew old. The lizard and all these animals. And at the end of the day, there's always pride, greed, or something that takes place in the story. And there's a learning point for the children at the end of those stories. Many of those people that heard those stories have also moved over to Canada. The gift of the heart, the power of telling stories, the power of sharing principles with our children. Now, by the way, when Silicon Valley or Harvard Business Review or Fortune Magazine or Forbes Magazine puts together some sort of article or research and then they tell us about leadership storytelling, we go, ooh, wow, that is profound. But the reality is many times we have these things in our neighborhoods and communities already, in our organizations, but because they didn't term it a certain way, because they didn't have the exposure or the clouds that some of these places have, they don't have that same reception as we would give to Harvard Business Review, Forbes Magazine, Fortune.com, and all those prominent newspapers and resources. So, are there people that have these things around us that we're not taking seriously, or we're not giving it the same clout as we would give if it's coming from all those influential resources? So the foundations of truth of ABCD, everyone has a gift, and we all agree with that. If we don't agree, we shouldn't be here. Everyone has something to contribute. Everyone cares about something, and that passion is his or her motivation to act. But here's a question. How would we know if they have a gift if we don't speak to them? How would we speak to them if we don't knock on their doors and say hello? How do we knock on their doors and say hello if we don't have the desire or the intention to know them and want to learn from them and want to connect with them and want to have some sort of rapport with them? So before, and may I say this, before ABCD, before we can start thinking about the strengths of our community and how we can use it to impact our community, before we think about all those things, I want to start with the foundation. Do you know your neighbors? Do we know our immigrant neighbors that are coming in on a yearly basis to this country? Let me quickly talk about the economic migrants. I believe, let me look at the numbers. Over the past 5 years, Canada has welcomed over 1.5 million immigrants, mostly under the economic category. And there are several categories. You can come in under the refugee category, you can come in through a spouse, and some other places. But usually, economic category. Roughly 75% of Canada's population growth is currently coming from immigration. You're not having enough babies. So the country is like, we need to make up for this We need to bring more people in so that we can take care of the older people as they get older and as they retire and move out of the workforce. By 2036, immigrants will represent up to 30% of Canada's population, compared with 20.7% in 2011. Now, who is this new immigrant? The new immigrants, I want to talk about how we were qualified to come here. Because I think it's important for that information to be shared. So there is some level of respect when people have conversations with immigrants. And I've been here for 6 years. There are times when you're speaking to people, you realize that you're not speaking at the same level. Sometimes there's this feeling of, oh, we saved you. Or, oh, we helped you. So you should be grateful. Yes, I am grateful. But the reality is, at one point or another, over the past 500 years, we all moved for different reasons. And just because I am a first generation and the person sitting in the audience could be a fifth generation, doesn't mean one person is better than the other. Something for us to think about. Canada has a point-based system for selecting labor immigrants. You have to have a certain amount of money in your pockets to be able to even come in. You have to have good health. If you're sick, Canada's not letting you in. So you got to have good health. So we're tested before we come in. You got to be proficient in English or French. No criminal record. If you have a master's or a PhD, you get higher points. So you got to be very well educated before you can come into Canada. You got to have a high English score in the IELTS. And you got to be of young age. So the older you get, I have a friend of mine who is like the director of marketing in a big company back in Nigeria. And I talked about, why don't you move over to Canada? And she's like, I'm 40. Like the older you get, the less your chances of being able to come in. So, why do I share this? There are thousands of untapped gifts. There are thousands of untapped talents and assets and resources that are arriving yearly in our neighborhoods. How do we tap into these gifts and assets if we don't even know them? Sorry about that. If we don't even know them. Let's pretend that you didn't see that. If you don't even know them. Just like the first story I shared about the Igbo tribe. There are thousands of them that have moved over to Canada. Imagine sitting down and learning about the apprenticeship program. Or imagine just sitting down and learning about their educational experience back home. There's a guy by the name of Aki that I had a chance to meet many years ago. And he shared a story with me. Some of the things that his company, he works in a bank, that they're dealing with. He's like, in Nigeria, we dealt with that over 10 years ago. So he is trying to learn the art of how do I not offend by sharing this is what you should do, this is what you should not do, and how do I keep quiet and not sound like I know it all? Because usually when I speak, I see the eyes roll in the room, or I see my colleagues looking at me with a certain look that I can't even translate at this point. And I knew exactly what he was talking about because I had gone through that several times as well. Let's quickly talk about some of the challenges that immigrants face. Current challenges. There are 4 stages of integration when an immigrant is coming in to Canada. There's the moment of excitement. The land of opportunity. I can do so much. You probably sold a lot of things back home as well. So it's like, oh, heck yeah, I'm here. I'm excited. Let's make this happen. Canada has been marketed to us for years, as a fantastic place. And it definitely is a fantastic place. So people come in here with a lot of excitement. But then, I think maybe 6 months to a year, they call it the period of shock. The period of shock starts to occur and take place when maybe you brought some money and you realize that everything here, you need to have credit to be able to buy it. So for the first few months, you have to pay cash. To buy a car, you got to pay cash because you don't have credit. To find a place to stay, landlord's not going to let you stay because you don't have a history. So suddenly they're asking you to pay first rent, second rent, last rent, half a toe, one finger, and you need to get someone to co-sign with you. How can you get someone to co-sign with you if you're new in the country and you don't know anyone? Well, we're sorry, you can't. So people end up living with their friends or their colleagues, or they stay in a basement, or they live in a small community. So that's a challenge, a shock. You were a director at your former organization, you were a VP, and then you move over to Canada, and you can't even get a job at that level or an interview. So what do? You start to apply a step lower. And then when you don't get a job or call that one, then you start applying at the manager level. And then you're like, I better start applying for entry level. And you go for an interview and you ask questions and you got to find ways, you're advised to numb down your experience so you don't sound overqualified for the role. Why? Because your savings is depleted, you have a family you need to take care of, a lot of things you don't qualify for until you have a job. So it is just, we let them in, and then we create all these other problems. So you go through the second stage, and then the third stage is when you are now slowly adjusted. And then the final stage is your integration, when you are fully integrated into the system and you're able to start walking, running, and soaring. We can help speed up the first two processes for people in our communities. We can help them through that by connections to network, by having conversations with them, by providing advice, providing tips, by opening doors for them. I heard someone share this quote. He said, a lot of immigrants and a lot of diverse people are over-mentored and under-sponsored. Think about that. We mentor and we mentor, but we don't open doors because, it's a close, I don't want to mess up my network. I don't want it to seem bad or whatever, so I would prefer just to mentor this person and keep it at a distance. Let's take it to that next level. Let's start opening doors for individuals. Here's another one. 77% of people of color feel on guard at the office. Now, this is just people of color. I'm not just talking about immigrants at this point. But think about that. Feeling on guard at the office. And I've shared a story of Aki. I have several stories as well. I remember one particular incident when I worked in a bank. And I was asking someone, can you help me do something? And I probably am not even going to get the English phrase right at this point. In my language, the way you say it is, basically like, can you help me do it? So when I shared it with that person, what they thought I was saying is, can you show me how to do it? But what I was saying, because, I mix English and my language regularly, is, can you do it on my behalf? Does that make sense, the two differences? So I asked her, and she said, okay, well, this is how you do it. And then I'm looking like, excuse me, I'm asking you to help me do it. And the person looked at me like, oh, no, he didn't. I'm telling you how to do it. And then our voices started to get louder, and she gets frustrated. She gets up, and she walks out. So later on, I'm talking to my wife when I went home, and I'm like, weird experience today. This happened. She's laughing the whole time. And then she explained, she's like, you're speaking then directly from your language and interpreting it into English, but she's speaking proper Canadian British English. And you were wrong, young man. You need to go back and apologize. So I went back to apologize the next day. But think about the emotional friction that had taken place in that time period. And if that wasn't explained to me by somebody else, I wouldn't have known. And I wouldn't have been able to approach that person and have that conversation. So think about the people that are coming in and they're not even sure about it. In my country, if you give something to someone with the left hand, it's considered offensive in my tribe. So when I was working in the bank one day, I gave something to someone in my left hand because I was carrying something in my right hand. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. And they were like, for what? And I'm like, I gave it to you with my left hand. She said, good job. And I'm like, well, okay, never mind. You don't even need to know. But it is quite interesting. Things like that take place on a regular basis in our communities, in our homes, in our communities, in our workplaces, and we're not even aware of it. We're not even aware, and it causes friction that we're not sure of. And until we all go over that hump of not feeling, that feeling of awkwardness, until we step over that, we're not going to get to that level. How much time do I have? 10 minutes. Okay, I saw her sitting in front. I'm like, okay, I hope she's not going to come up and be like, all right, get out of here, buddy. Thank you very much. In the workplace, 41% of immigrants report high levels of stress. Tough barrier of entry into job place. I talked about the job application process can be very hard. Stories of microaggression, being othered, being ignored, being looked down on. These stories are occurring on a regular basis. A few months ago, somebody called me from one of our African associations in the Waterloo region. And one of their members had a situation where they were both accused, two women were accused of stealing something at the office by their boss. And they were like brought in front of the office, and it was a very embarrassing experience for them. Now, because they don't speak English that well, basically they were taken advantage of. And at the end of the day, it was discovered that they weren't even the ones that took those things. The company didn't apologize, those leaders didn't apologize. So they reached out to me trying to get advice on, can we sue at this point? I reached out to a lawyer friend of mine, and he said, yes, they can. And he was willing to take up the case, but the two women said no. Why? Because they're the breadwinners in their family. If they take up a case like that, they will lose their job, or they might lose their job, or the fear of losing their job, or the fear of attack from their bosses afterwards. Subtle attacks, by the way. Most of the time, it's not overt, it's covert. So what do? They keep working in the organization and pretend it's not there. And there's so many stories like this that take place. So what are the qualities of a responsible neighbor? I'm going to be focusing more on this later on in the afternoon when we speak. Being intentional. Willing to connect, willing to coach, willing to learn more. Ignore what you saw. That's it. Come on, Connor, you're supposed to work with me here. They're intentional, they're willing to connect, they're willing to coach, they're willing to learn more. Let me focus on the first one for now. Just being intentional. How intentional are we with building relationships with people around us? I was speaking to someone earlier on, I believe it was Heather actually, and we were talking about, the awkwardness in the process of getting to know one another. So it is, how do you say your name? And I'm like, whatever you say, it works for me. Whatever you say works. It's okay. So we're conscious of how we say it. We're conscious of what to say. We're conscious of, is this person Muslim or not Muslim? So am I supposed to shake their hand or not shake? Or do I bow or do I stand? We're being conscious of what is distance, what is the appropriate distance when we speak to neighbors coming from a different country. We're conscious of, am I speaking too fast, so I should slow down? If I sound too slowly or speak too slowly, this person might feel like I'm making them seem stupid now because I'm talking like this. And they're probably wondering, why are you talking like this? So you have all these things that are running through your mind on a regular, consistent basis. So the question is, how do we overcome that? It is hard, it is awkward. But may I just suggest, be intentional. Just do it. As long as you know you have good intent. And if you mess up, apologize. And then just move on and continue. So what we have, and it's a human tendency all across the world, is when we don't understand another tribe, another nation, another culture, another person. And because of those awkwardness that could come in, what we basically do is we just let it be. We allow it to naturally occur. So what we mean by naturally occur is that person naturally walks up to your door, and that person naturally knocks on your door, and that person naturally initiates the conversation, and then we're willing to take it from there. That is not natural. That's them trying to be intentional. So how can we be more natural? How can we be more intentional about some of these things? I'm going to focus on the other three later on when I come, or when I speak at 1 o'clock. But one thing that I wanted to also share is around the challenges, fear. Fear of the immigrants. Fear, the concern of imposter syndrome. That is a big one that a lot of immigrants are facing. Why? Because I don't speak as quickly as you. I don't sound as eloquent as you. I'm coming from a totally different country and trying to understand your workplace culture. I'm trying to understand your culture. I'm trying to understand how you do things. And I don't understand why your eggs are white instead of brown, and why your milk is white instead of... Like all these different things that people are going through that they might not share with you, but are questions that are going on in their mind. For you to identify that person and say, this person is a gifted individual, or this person is the major connector that's going to connect me to a completely different set of people and associations within our community. For you to be able to identify that, we need to help the immigrants out. We need to help people realize, yes, you've gone through your shock period, and yes, you're still trying to integrate. Yes, you've hit your head against the wall several times. Yes, you've been questioned many times. And yes, our degrees are questioned. I just want you to be aware of that. At the workplace, where did you get your master's? Oh, we need Canadian experience over here. Oh, we need Canadian this, Canadian that over there. Oh, we need Canadian education as well here. So basically, when you go through that on a regular, consistent basis, you start getting to a point where, like, am I stupid? Like, I thought I qualified with all these points. I thought I had to go through all this, and the school, and the country has checked on my school, and they know I speak English, and I've spoken English all my dang old life. And then suddenly, someone is now challenging my English. So you start having this situation where individuals are challenged, and they start to question themselves. And they start to settle to survive. How can we take the immigrant from settling to survive to actually soaring and thriving in our communities? So one final story as I end. I have a podcast called The Immigrant View. It's available on all podcast channels, whichever one that you like. And I like to bring immigrants in that, have a particular story to share. People that have done amazing things in their community. And I heard an amazing story. The person that I interviewed last week, it's not aired yet. He came from Uganda. His family moved to Uganda, I guess, when he was very young. And I don't know if you know about Uganda, the story. In the 40s and 50s, between Kenya and Uganda, the governments there the British governments were building a lot of rails during that time period. And they brought in a lot of Indians from India to help build those rails. And many of those people stayed. The last time I was in Kenya to do some work over there, I remember they were like, all the Kenyan citizens on this line, and then the rest of y'all on that line. And I just saw all these Indians just walking through, and I'm like, what is going on? That's when I Googled and I learned about that. Idi Amin was a dictator in Uganda that came into power in the 70s. And he demanded that every Indian should leave the country within 90 days. Think about that. You have lived your whole life, let's say in London, Ontario, in Kitchener. A new leader comes into power and basically says, you need to leave this country, all you know, all you love, in 90 days. And he said they had to leave in the middle of the night. Canada welcomed thousands of them in the 70s. So he started life here with his family. Of course, he was a young child then. His father went through the same challenges that many immigrants are currently going through. It's a lot easier for new immigrants now, I must say. So back in those days, it must have been a lot harder for him. I can't even imagine some of the things that his parents had to go through. But they went through it. He was able to get his bachelor's degree, get his master's, get his PhD. He's now a CEO of one of the top government organizations in Ontario. And he was just sharing of how he is so proud to be a Canadian, and how he is giving back to his community, and how he is serving not just the country, but the people in different communities through his education, through his privilege, through his exposure, through his experience. He's doing so many amazing things in the community right now. But when you pay attention to his story, there are a series of events that took place where people believed in him, where individuals pulled him through, when people were able to pull through and be able to educate and mentor and sponsor and give opportunities, where people listened to him and were able to lift him up in times when he was down. And he talked about his experience with racism growing up in Canada as well, when he was a teenager and when he was going to school. And I said, how did you deal with that? He said, I had no other option. I had to deal with it. Where else do I go? This is home, so I have to make it work. But I want you to think about where he started from. They literally came to Canada with like 2 suitcases or something. Think about it, running out in the middle of the night to leave your country. You don't have time to think about which Netflix password do I want to put on my phone? Or you don't have time to think about our first world problems. You literally just grab the bags, grab the passports, and you head out in the middle of the night, hoping you will make it out alive. But think about the start. And think about what his parents went through and his story, but also where he is now. And I had a privilege to also interview his daughter, who has also started her own business, and who's also running her own business and is raising, I believe it's Series A or something right now for her business. It's amazing what we can accomplish when people are able to step in with the immigrants and help them through that process. And not just make them feel like an imposter or I'm here to help you, but let's do this together. I need you, and I know you also need me. Together we can build and develop our communities. With that said, I want to say thank you very much. Continue to enjoy the rest of the sessions, and have a great day. Thank you.
This is my chance to give out gratitude stickers.
Yes, I get one.
There you go. I am very thankful.